My sister-in-law tried to exclude me from family events. Here's how I turned the tables. If you enjoy these crazy stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And hey, if you didn't like it, go ahead and hit dislike. I won't hold it against you. Let's get into it. Throwaway account for obvious reasons, and buckle up, buttercups, because this is going to be a deep dive. Grab your snacks and maybe a stress ball. Hey Reddit, longtime lurker, first time poster, and honestly, just hitting submit on this feels like a minor act of rebellion. I've been wanting to share this saga for what feels like an eternity now, partly to finally exercise these frustrating memories, and partly because I have a hunch some of you out there can relate to the soul-crushing experience of feeling like the unwanted stepchild at every family gathering. This is the tale of my turbulent relationship, or rather the relentless campaign to have zero relationship, with my sister-in-law, who we'll call Brenda, because her real name is way too identifying and the internet is a scary place. Brenda, bless her heart, not really, has seemingly made it her life's mission to subtly, and increasingly with the grace of a bull in a china shop, not so subtly, exclude me from pretty much every single family event since the day I foolishly said I do to her brother Mark about 5 glorious years ago. From the carefully curated highlight reel of social media, or even just from the casual, surface-level observation of an outsider at a holiday dinner, our family get-togethers might appear as a picture of quintessential domestic bliss. We have the standard calendar-mandated events, the Thanksgiving food coma, the Christmas present free-for-all, the slightly awkward Easter egg hunt, and the occasional, seemingly spontaneous backyard barbecue when the fickle weather in our region decides to cooperate. But peel back the layers of forced smiles plastered on for group photos and the polite, almost robotic conversations, and you'll find this constant, insidious undercurrent of Brenda actively trying to make me feel like I'm wearing an out-of-order sign on my forehead, like I'm an unwelcome gatecrasher at a party I should rightfully be co-hosting. The exclusion tactics started with a level of subtlety that bordered on psychological warfare, making me question my own perception of reality at times. I distinctly remember our very first Christmas as a married couple. Mark's family has this deeply entrenched tradition of a massive Christmas Eve celebration at their parents' house, the kind of gathering where the aroma of simmering gravy and pine needles hangs heavy in the air, and the sheer volume of relatives crammed into the living room threatens the structural integrity of the house. I was genuinely excited, eager to finally feel like a legitimate part of this new family unit, ready to embrace their traditions and contribute to the festive cheer. But Brenda, she was like a human icicle dipped in tinsel. She barely made eye contact, offering curt, almost begrudging nods at best. If I dared to interject in a conversation she was having with her inner circle, usually her mother or her gaggle of cousins, her eyes would glaze over as if I'd suddenly started speaking in ancient Aramaic, or she'd abruptly pivot to a completely unrelated topic, effectively erecting an invisible wall between us. Sometimes, she'd even more dismissively turn her back to me, physically presenting me with her shoulder as if to say, "Your presence here is as welcome as a fruitcake at a weight loss convention." Initially, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was just stressed about the holidays. Perhaps I was overthinking things, projecting my own newlywed anxieties. But as the months bled into years, the pattern became as clear and predictable as the sunrise. I'd consistently find out about family gatherings through Mark, often at the last minute, with him casually mentioning, "Oh yeah, Mom's having everyone over on Saturday," leaving me wondering if I was even included in that everyone. And there were more than a few occasions where it felt like Brenda had conveniently forgotten to loop me into the initial planning emails or group text messages. It was always a flimsy, plausible-sounding excuse. "Oh, I thought Mark told you." Or it was a really last-minute thing, you know how Mom is. But the sheer frequency of these oversights, coupled with the specific circumstances, always pointed back to Brenda, like an invisible hand meticulously snipping me out of the family fabric. Take, for instance, Mark's mom's birthday just last year. Mark had casually mentioned a family dinner a few weeks prior, and being the eager-to-please daughter-in-law I was trying to be, I had even enthusiastically offered to help with the cooking or contribute a dish. Anything I can bring, Mom? I'd asked, genuinely wanting to contribute.
Oh, that's so sweet of you, my name.
Mark's mom had replied warmly, but Brenda said she wanted to handle everything this year. Keep it small and intimate, you know? But as the actual birthday date loomed closer, the silence from Brenda's end was deafening. No time confirmation, no location specifics, just radio silence. When I finally, a little nervously, asked Mark about the details, he looked a little sheepish, that familiar expression that usually preceded some awkward and unwelcome revelation. Oh, yeah, he mumbled, his gaze drifting towards the ceiling. Brenda kind of took over the planning. She said she wanted to keep it small this year, just a little something at Mom's house. Fast forward to the evening of the supposed small thing. We arrived at Mark's parents' house to find what could only be accurately described as a full-blown, professionally catered dinner party. The dining room table, usually reserved for more casual family meals, was groaning under the weight of gleaming chafing dishes filled with gourmet fare, and almost the entire extended family was present. A boisterous throng of aunts, uncles, and cousins, all milling about, laughing and catching up as if it were a mini family reunion. Brenda was right in the thick of it all, radiating the effortless charm of a seasoned hostess, gliding through the crowd, effortlessly navigating conversations and chatting animatedly with everyone, except, you guessed it, me. I felt utterly invisible, like I'd stumbled onto the set of a sitcom where I was playing the silent background extra. I made a valiant effort to engage with Mark's other siblings and their spouses, who, to their eternal credit, were always genuinely lovely and welcoming, offering warm smiles and inclusive conversation. But Brenda's palpable coldness hung in the air like a persistent, unwelcome guest, casting a distinct shadow over the entire evening for me, making me feel like I was intruding on something I wasn't truly a part of. It wasn't just the landmark events, the ones etched in the annual family calendar months in advance. Even for the seemingly spontaneous, casual get-togethers, like a lazy weekend afternoon at their parents' pool during the sweltering summer months, I'd often be the last to know, or sometimes not know at all until Mark happened to mention it in passing days later. Oh yeah, we were at Mom and Dad's on Saturday. Brenda brought her new inflatable flamingo. It was hilarious. The casualness of his tone was like a tiny dagger twisting in my gut. It felt so deliberate, so meticulously orchestrated, like Brenda was carefully curating these informal family moments, strategically snipping me out of the picture, as if I were an unwanted element in a carefully composed photograph. The truly insidious part of Brenda's campaign was that whenever I tried to broach the subject with Mark, to articulate how these repeated exclusions made me feel, he would invariably get a little defensive, his ingrained loyalty to his sister immediately kicking in like an automatic reflex. He'd resort to well-meaning but ultimately dismissive phrases like, "Oh honey, you're just being a little sensitive," or "Brenda doesn't mean anything by it. That's just Brenda. She's always been a bit much, you know?" He and Brenda shared a uniquely close sibling bond, the kind where they seemed to communicate through a complex system of unspoken glances and shared history. And I think he genuinely struggled to see her actions from my perspective, from the lonely vantage point of the person consistently left standing on the periphery. The cumulative emotional toll this constant feeling of being an outsider was taking on me was far more significant than I initially acknowledged. I started to dread family events, the very occasions that should have been filled with warmth, laughter, and a sense of belonging instead became sources of intense anxiety, self-doubt, and a gnawing feeling of inadequacy. I felt like I was constantly navigating a social minefield, walking on eggshells, desperately trying to decipher the unspoken rules of engagement with Brenda. It made me question my place in this family, the family I had married into with such hopeful expectations. And honestly, it even started to cast a shadow over my relationship with Mark, creating a subtle but persistent wedge between us that I desperately didn't want. There was one particular incident, a few years back now, that is seared into my memory with the clarity of a high-definition photograph, a crystal clear example of Brenda's almost cartoonishly deliberate exclusion. It was during the lead up to the Christmas holidays, a time that should have been brimming with festive cheer and anticipation. Mark's family has this cherished tradition, a ritual really, of venturing out to a local Christmas tree farm together to collectively select the perfect tree for their living room. It's usually a fun, slightly chaotic, but ultimately heartwarming outing, complete with the obligatory stop for steaming hot cocoa afterwards and the inevitable good-natured debate over which tree possesses the ideal balance of fullness and symmetry. Mark had mentioned the tree farm trip a few days beforehand, and I was genuinely looking forward to it, already picturing us all bundled up in our winter coats, laughing as we trudged through the snowy rows of fragrant evergreens. The morning of the planned outing, I was downstairs enjoying a leisurely cup of coffee and getting ready, when Mark came down the stairs looking a bit off, his brow slightly furrowed, a telltale sign that some awkward revelation was imminent. "Hey," he said, his voice carrying a hesitant note of awkwardness. "Brenda just called. She said they're going to head over to the farm a bit earlier than originally planned. Something about wanting to beat the crowds." A sharp pang of disappointment, sharp enough to momentarily steal my breath, shot through me. "Oh," I said, trying my absolute best to sound nonchalant, to mask the wave of hurt that was already starting to bubble up inside. "So, they've already left?" "Yeah," Mark replied, still avoiding direct eye contact as he fiddled with his phone. "But we can still go later if you want. We can pick out a tree ourselves. It'll be just as fun." But the magic was gone, completely and utterly. The genuine enthusiasm I had felt just moments before had evaporated like morning mist in the summer sun. It wasn't just about the perfunctory act of picking out a Christmas tree. It was about the family tradition, the shared experience, the simple feeling of being included in a meaningful family moment. And I had been deliberately, unequivocally excluded. I knew, with a certainty that settled like a cold stone in the pit of my stomach, that Brenda had orchestrated this. There was no logical reason to trek to the Christmas tree farm hours earlier than planned, especially on a weekday morning. It was simply her way of ensuring I wasn't part of that particular family moment, that I was once again left standing on the outside, peering in through the frosted window of their familial warmth. I ended up saying I wasn't really feeling up to it, the weight of disappointment having completely sapped my energy and any remaining festive spirit. Mark, either genuinely oblivious to the depth of my hurt, or perhaps consciously choosing to remain blissfully unaware, went to the tree farm with his parents and, of course, Brenda. I spent the rest of that afternoon feeling profoundly hurt, utterly isolated and increasingly resentful in my own home, surrounded by the cheerful decorations that now felt like a mocking reminder of my exclusion. That day, that seemingly insignificant incident became a significant turning point for me. I finally realized that I couldn't continue to passively let Brenda's exclusionary behavior dictate my entire experience of being part of this family. I needed to find a way not to engage in petty retaliation, but to subtly shift the power dynamic, to turn the tables in a way that would ultimately allow me to finally feel like I belonged, like I was truly home. Over the course of the next year or so, I started to consciously implement a few key strategies, subtle but deliberate shifts in my approach that I hoped would eventually lead to a positive change. Firstly, I made a firm decision to take the initiative when it came to family events. Instead of passively waiting for Mark or someone else to relay information about what was happening, I started reaching out directly to Mark's parents. I'd call them every few weeks just to check in and see how they were doing. And during those casual conversations, I would always casually inquire about any upcoming family gatherings. I'd offer my help with the planning, suggest ideas for activities that everyone might enjoy, and generally make it abundantly clear that I was not only aware of these events, but also genuinely wanted to be an active and contributing participant. This proactive approach had a couple of significant and beneficial effects. Firstly, it made it considerably more difficult for Brenda to exclude me without it being glaringly obvious to everyone else, especially to her parents, who, I suspected, were not entirely blind to her behavior, but perhaps hadn't fully grasped its extent. If I had already spoken to Mark's mom about the upcoming summer barbecue and enthusiastically offered to bring my famous 7-layer dip, it was much harder for Brenda to pretend I wasn't supposed to be there, or to conveniently forget to include me in the final head count. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly in the long run, it allowed me to cultivate and strengthen my own personal relationship with Mark's parents, who are, at their core, genuinely kind, warm, and welcoming people, and were likely largely unaware of the subtle but persistent campaign Brenda had been waging against me. I also made a concerted effort to build individual connections with other members of Mark's extended family, his aunts, uncles, and the various cousins who populated the family gatherings. At these events, instead of just sticking close to Mark like a barnacle or feeling awkward and isolated on the fringes, I would actively seek out these relatives, introduce myself, or reintroduce myself if necessary, armed with a genuine smile and a firm handshake, and engage them in meaningful conversation. I made a point of asking them about their lives, their hobbies, their families, showing a genuine and sincere interest in getting to know them as individuals, beyond just being Mark's wife. This not only helped me feel more integrated into the broader family circle, but also, crucially, created a valuable support network within the family that wasn't solely reliant on Mark or immediate family's awareness of Brenda's exclusionary tactics. Another crucial step I took in my quiet rebellion was to consciously work on not letting Brenda's negativity affect me as deeply as it had in the past. I started to recognize, through a combination of observation and perhaps a healthy dose of self-preservation, that her behavior, while undeniably hurtful and frustrating, likely stemmed from her own internal insecurities, her own unresolved issues, and it wasn't necessarily a personal indictment of my character or worth. While it still stung to feel excluded or subtly slighted, I made a conscious effort not to internalize it, not to let it chip away at my self-esteem or make me question my place in Mark's life. Instead, I focused my energy on enjoying the company of the family members who did genuinely seem to want me around, and on savoring the positive moments I did manage to share with the family, however fleeting they might be. Of course, there were still instances where Brenda's attempts to exclude me were so blatant and poorly executed, they were almost comical in their sheer audacity. For example, she once meticulously organized a girls' day out with Mark's female relatives, his mother, his other sister, who lived out of state and rarely visited, making this exclusion particularly pointed, and a few of the female cousins, and conveniently forgot to include me on the invitation list. I only found out about it later when Mark's mom innocently mentioned what a lovely time they had had at the local spa on social media, posting a group photo with everyone beaming and relaxed. Except, you guessed it, yours truly. My initial reaction was the familiar wave of hurt and frustration, that familiar sting of being deliberately overlooked. But then I took a deep breath, remembered my new, more assertive approach, and decided to handle it differently. Instead of confronting Brenda directly, which in the past had only led to vehement denial, gaslighting, and accusations of me being overly sensitive or dramatic, I casually mentioned it to Mark's mom the next time I saw her. I said something along the lines of, "Oh, it looked like you all had a lovely time at the spa the other day. That group photo on Facebook was so nice. I didn't realize you were planning something." Mark's mom looked genuinely surprised, a flicker of confusion crossing her kind face. "Oh, you weren't invited? Brenda organized the whole thing. I just assumed she had invited everyone who would want to go." She trailed off, a look of dawning understanding slowly spreading across her features as she likely pieced together Brenda's intentional omission. She didn't need me to say anything more. In that moment, I knew that she had picked up on Brenda's not-so-subtle exclusion, and that, in its own quiet way, felt like a significant, albeit small, victory in my ongoing silent battle. Over time, my consistent and proactive efforts started to yield noticeable and gratifying results. Mark's parents, bless their incredibly supportive hearts, began to include me more directly and proactively in their communication about all family events. They would call me themselves to extend invitations, specifically ask for my input on planning details, and generally make me feel like a valued and respected member of their family, not just an appendage to their son. Their warmth and genuine affection were like a soothing balm to the wounds that Brenda's constant coldness had inflicted over the years. I also observed a subtle but significant shift in the way some of Mark's other relatives interacted with me. Because I had taken the initiative to connect with them on a personal level, they were now much more likely to seek me out at gatherings, actively include me in their conversations, and sometimes even go out of their way to make me feel welcome and comfortable, offering genuine smiles and warm greetings. It was as if I had slowly but surely built my own little island of support and belonging within the broader, sometimes turbulent family landscape. Brenda, of course, was not entirely oblivious to this gradual but undeniable change in the family dynamic. I could often sense the subtle flicker of annoyance in her eyes whenever I was engaged in a particularly lively conversation with her parents or sharing a genuine laugh with her cousins. Her attempts to exclude me became less frequent, and even when they did occur, they seemed to carry less weight, less of an impact on my overall experience. It was as if her power over the family's social dynamics, her ability to subtly control who was in and who was out, was slowly but surely diminishing, like a wilting flower deprived of sunlight. The real turning point, the moment when I truly felt like I had not just weathered the storm, but had actually and definitively turned the tables in this long and often frustrating silent conflict, happened last year during our annual family vacation. Mark's family has this long-standing and deeply cherished tradition of renting a large house right on the beach for a week every summer. In years past, Brenda had always taken the undisputed lead in organizing the entire trip, from meticulously selecting the location and coordinating the dates, down to planning every single daily activity. And in those previous years, I often felt like I was simply tagging along, an afterthought in a vacation that was essentially curated by Brenda for everyone else's enjoyment, with my preferences and opinions seemingly irrelevant. But last year was different. Mark's mom, perhaps finally fully and acutely aware of the underlying tension and the somewhat toxic dynamic between Brenda and me, decided to involve me much more directly and meaningfully in the planning process. She called me several times in the months leading up to the vacation, genuinely asking for my input on potential locations, discussing the best dates that would accommodate everyone's schedules, and even brainstorming ideas for fun activities we might want to do together as a group. I was absolutely thrilled and honestly a little surprised to finally feel like a valued and respected participant in this long-standing family tradition, my opinions actually being sought and considered. When we finally arrived at the sprawling, sun-drenched beach house, I noticed a distinct and incredibly welcome change in the overall atmosphere. Mark's parents were incredibly intentional about making sure I felt included in absolutely everything. They actively sought out my opinions on everything from dinner menus to evening entertainment, enthusiastically involved me in beach games during the day and card games in the evenings, and generally treated me with the same warmth, consideration, and genuine affection they showed their own children. Brenda, on the other hand, seemed a bit subdued. She wasn't her usual boisterous center of attention self, the queen bee orchestrating every social interaction. She was noticeably quieter and more withdrawn, often retreating to her room with a book or simply sitting silently on the porch, gazing out at the endless expanse of the ocean with a somewhat pensive expression. I could definitely sense her underlying annoyance at my increased level of involvement and the shift in the family dynamic, but for the first time there wasn't much she could actively do to undermine my experience or make me feel like an outsider. The power dynamic had subtly but significantly shifted. One particularly memorable evening, we were all gathered on the spacious porch after a delicious seafood dinner, the air thick with the salty scent of the ocean and the sound of crashing waves, watching the sun slowly dip below the horizon, painting the sky in breathtaking hues of vibrant orange, fiery red, and soft lavender. Mark's mom turned to me, her eyes sparkling with warmth and her smile radiating genuine affection, and said, "My name? You know, we are just so incredibly glad that you're a part of our family. You've brought so much joy and laughter into Mark's life, and we really appreciate having you." It was a simple, heartfelt statement, delivered with such sincerity, but it resonated deeply within me, washing away years of subtle slights and feelings of exclusion. It felt like a clear and unambiguous acknowledgement of my rightful place in the family, a direct and comforting contrast to Brenda's years of subtle and not so subtle attempts to make me feel unwelcome. Brenda, who was sitting just a few feet away, her gaze fixed on the horizon, didn't say a word. She simply continued to stare out at the ocean, her expression unreadable, but definitely not mirroring the warmth and joy that filled the porch. In that moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I had a profound realization. I had finally truly broken through her seemingly impenetrable wall of exclusion. By proactively taking the initiative, by diligently building genuine connections with other family members, and by steadfastly refusing to let her negativity define my experience, I had effectively and perhaps permanently turned the tables. The rest of the vacation was a resounding success. I felt genuinely happy, relaxed, and fully included in all the family activities, from building sandcastles with younger cousins to playing late-night card games with Mark's parents. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't experience that familiar knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach at the thought of spending an extended period of time with Mark's family. Since that pivotal beach vacation, things have continued to improve, albeit gradually and with the occasional minor hiccup. Brenda's attempts to exclude me have become less frequent, and more importantly, when they do occur, they seem to carry significantly less weight and have a much smaller impact on my overall experience. I have cultivated a solid and supportive relationship with Mark's parents and many other members of his extended family, and I now feel a genuine sense of belonging, a confident understanding of my place within the family unit. Mark, too, has become much more attuned to Brenda's past behavior. I think witnessing me independently build these meaningful relationships within his family has finally helped him fully grasp my perspective and understand the subtle ways in which I had been consistently excluded. He is now much more likely to notice if Brenda is trying to sideline me and will often subtly step in to include me in conversations or activities, a level of awareness and support that means the world to me. It hasn't been a fairy tale ending, of course. There are still occasional moments, usually during the high-pressure cooker of the holidays or larger, more formal gatherings, when Brenda's passive-aggressive comments or subtle snubs manage to prickle my skin and remind me of our complicated history. But overall, I feel like I've won this long and often frustrating silent battle. I refuse to be pushed to the margins, and I actively, persistently work to build my own authentic connections within the family I married into. This entire experience has been a powerful and ultimately empowering reminder of the importance of standing up for yourself, even in subtle and non-confrontational ways, and of never allowing others to dictate your sense of belonging or your rightful place within a family unit. It wasn't a dramatic, made-for-TV confrontation with Brenda, no grand showdown filled with tearful accusations and dramatic exits. Instead, it was a slow, steady, and persistent process of asserting myself, building genuine connections, and ultimately reclaiming my rightful place within my husband's family, not as an outsider looking in, but as an integral and valued member. I'm sharing this lengthy and detailed saga because I know from countless hours spent lurking on this very subreddit that so many people grapple with challenging and often heartbreaking relationships with their in-laws. It can be an incredibly isolating and emotionally draining experience, making you feel like an unwelcome intruder in your own life. But please remember, you have more agency and power in this situation than you might initially believe. You can actively choose how you respond to their negative behavior, and you can proactively work to cultivate the kind of positive and supportive relationships you desire within the family you married into. Don't give up on finding your place and building those connections. Update 1. Hey everyone, just wanted to pop back in and give you all a quick update on the Brenda situation and the overall family dynamics. First off, a massive thank you for all the incredibly supportive comments and thoughtful advice on my original post. It was honestly so validating to hear that so many of you have navigated similar frustrating experiences. It truly made me feel a lot less alone in what felt like a very isolating ordeal. A few significant things have happened in the 6 months since I first shared my story. Firstly, Mark and I had a really good heart-to-heart and, most importantly, honest conversation specifically about Brenda. He finally admitted that he had been somewhat oblivious to the extent of her exclusionary behavior over the years, attributing it to her quirkiness or just being Brenda. He sincerely apologized for not always being more aware and supportive of my feelings, and for sometimes dismissing my concerns as me being too sensitive. Since that much needed conversation, he has been much more proactive in making sure I feel included in family plans, consciously checking in with me, and even subtly intervening a few times when he's noticed Brenda trying her old tricks, like forgetting to mention a casual get together. This increased awareness and genuine support from Mark has made a truly significant difference in how I feel about attending family gatherings. Secondly, and this was honestly a bit of a pleasant surprise, Mark's mom actually had a quiet but firm word with Brenda. I don't know the specifics of their conversation, and honestly, I didn't pry, respecting their privacy. But apparently, Mark's mom gently but clearly let Brenda know that she had noticed her tendency to sometimes overlook or exclude me from family events, and that it wasn't really acceptable. She emphasized the importance of family unity and making everyone feel welcome. Things between Brenda and me haven't suddenly transformed into a heartwarming tale of newfound sisterly love, and we're certainly not exchanging friendship bracelets anytime soon. But her overt exclusionary behavior has definitely toned down considerably. She's generally more polite and even occasionally makes an effort to engage in civil conversation with me, and the instances of blatant forgetting to include me in plans have become much rarer. It's like she's finally realized that her behavior hasn't gone unnoticed. We had another family barbecue a few months ago, and while Brenda was still a bit reserved and not exactly my biggest fan, she did make more of a conscious effort to be civil and even included me in a few group conversations without immediately finding an excuse to walk away. There were even a couple of fleeting moments when she actually laughed at one of my jokes. It felt like a small, almost imperceptible step forward, but a step in the right direction nonetheless. I've also continued to actively nurture my relationships with the other members of Mark's extended family. I've had lunch with his favorite aunt twice now, and we've discovered a shared passion for vintage movies, which has been a lovely and unexpected connection. I also regularly chat with his cousins on social media, exchanging updates, funny memes, and generally building more personal connections. I genuinely feel much more connected and supported by this wider circle of family now, and it makes navigating the Brenda situation much more bearable. Overall, things are definitely on an upward trajectory. It's not a perfect Hallmark movie ending, and Brenda will likely always be a bit of a uniquely challenging individual in my life. But I no longer feel that constant underlying anxiety and sense of being an unwelcome outsider in my own family. Thanks again to everyone who offered their support and shared their own experiences. It truly helped me feel less alone and more empowered to navigate this tricky and often frustrating situation. Update 2. Wow, time really does have a way of slipping through your fingers, doesn't it? It's hard to believe that it's been a whole year since my last update. A significant amount has happened in our lives, and I wanted to share some truly wonderful news with you all. The biggest and most joyous news is that Mark and I are expecting our first child. We are absolutely over the moon with excitement, and the entire family, including some surprising members, is thrilled about the impending arrival. This development has actually had a surprisingly profound and almost transformative impact on my relationship with Brenda. When we first shared the news of the pregnancy with the family, Brenda's initial reaction was, well, let's just say it was very Brenda-esque. A bit muted, a touch reserved, and lacking the exuberant joy that practically radiated from everyone else. But over the past few months, as the reality of becoming an aunt has sunk in, she has actually started to come around in a way I honestly didn't anticipate in my wildest dreams. She's even offered to help with planning the baby shower, though I'm still keeping a close eye on the guest list and the potential for any accidental exclusions. And she's been asking Mark surprisingly detailed and genuinely interested questions about the nursery and our plans for the baby's arrival. She even knitted a surprisingly adorable little baby blanket. It's still relatively early days in this new dynamic, and I'm certainly not expecting us to suddenly become best friends who share deep personal secrets and braid each other's hair. But it feels like there has been a genuine and significant thawing in our previously icy and often hostile relationship. Mark's parents are, as expected, absolutely ecstatic about becoming grandparents. They have been incredibly supportive and involved throughout the pregnancy, offering help, advice, and an endless supply of enthusiasm and love. I feel so incredibly lucky to have them in my life. They have truly become the supportive and loving parents I always hoped for. We also had our annual family beach vacation again this past summer, and this time the entire atmosphere was palpably different and significantly more relaxed. Brenda was noticeably more inclusive, actively engaging with me in conversations, suggesting activities we could do together, and even offering to help me carry some of the heavier beach gear. I actually found myself genuinely enjoying spending time with her, a sentiment I honestly never thought I would utter without a hint of sarcasm. We even shared a few genuine laughs together over a particularly disastrous attempt at building a sandcastle that ended up looking more like a melted blob, which was a truly surreal and surprisingly pleasant experience. I genuinely believe that the impending arrival of the baby has made Brenda reevaluate her priorities and perhaps finally realize the importance of family connections and putting aside petty differences, especially when it comes to welcoming a new generation into the fold. Or maybe Mark's mom had another one of her quiet but incredibly effective heart-to-hearts with her. Whatever the underlying reason, I am incredibly grateful for this positive and unexpected shift in our dynamic. I know that navigating parenthood will undoubtedly bring its own unique set of challenges, and I'm sure there will still be moments of potential tension with Brenda in the future. But for now, I'm feeling overwhelmingly optimistic and hopeful about the future and our evolving family relationships. I finally feel like I am truly and fully integrated into Mark's family, and I am so incredibly excited to embark on this incredible new chapter of our lives with Mark and our growing family. Thank you again to each and every one of you who shared your own stories and offered such thoughtful and encouraging advice on my initial post. It truly helped me navigate what felt like a very isolating and challenging situation. I will definitely try to update again after our little one makes their grand entrance into the world. Final update. All right, Reddit, it's been a significant chunk of time since my last update, but I felt it was important to provide a final wrap-up to this whole Brenda saga. Our little one, Leo, is now a vibrant, incredibly curious, and wonderfully energetic toddler. And life has changed in so many more beautiful and profound ways than I could have ever imagined. The arrival of Leo truly did shift the entire family dynamic, just as I had optimistically hoped. Brenda has been, to my genuine surprise and continued delight, an absolutely wonderful aunt. She is completely doting and incredibly playful with him, showering him with affection and surprisingly thoughtful gifts. While we still don't have the kind of deep, confiding relationship you might see in a heartwarming family drama, we have definitely found a comfortable and respectful level of mutual understanding and even occasional, genuine moments of warmth and connection. I truly believe that seeing me as a mother caring for her nephew with such love and devotion has softened some of her previous, well, let's just say intense and often perplexing feelings towards me. We continue to have our regular family events, and while there are still the occasional fleeting moments where I might catch Brenda giving me a subtle side-eye or making a slightly pointed but ultimately harmless comment, it is absolutely nothing like the constant underlying tension and deliberate exclusion I experienced in the early years of my marriage. I now feel completely secure and confident in my place within the family. And I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that Mark, his parents, and the rest of the extended family genuinely care about me and absolutely adore Leo. Looking back on this long and winding journey, I am so incredibly glad that I didn't allow Brenda's initial behavior to push me away or define my experience of being part of this family. It took a significant amount of time, patience, oh boy, did it take patience, and conscious effort on my part. But by proactively taking the initiative, diligently building my own individual relationships with other family members, and steadfastly refusing to be excluded or marginalized, I was ultimately able to turn the tables and cultivate the kind of positive and supportive family connections that I truly deserved. For anyone who might be currently navigating a similar situation with difficult in-laws, My advice remains the same, perhaps even more strongly now, fueled by my own positive outcome. Be proactive in building the relationships you desire, cultivate your own strong support system within the family, and never, ever let someone else's negativity or insecurities dictate your sense of belonging or your overall experience. It might take time, and there will undoubtedly be moments of frustration and doubt, but things truly can get better with persistence, a positive mindset, and a healthy dose of self-advocacy. Thank you so much to everyone who followed my story, offered their invaluable support, and shared their own experiences. It was incredibly cathartic to share this journey, and the sense of community and understanding I found here on Reddit was truly invaluable in helping me navigate what was a challenging and often isolating experience. Wishing you all the very best in your own family dynamics, and remember, you deserve to feel loved and included. If you thought that was crazy, hit that like button and subscribe for more wild stories. And if you didn't quite enjoy it, feel free to hit the dislike. Your feedback means a lot. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think, or share your own experiences. And don't forget to check out my other videos for more insane tales. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.